So the last song on this album is a song called Heaven Only Knows, and I wrote the music to Heaven Only Knows really quickly. It was influenced a little bit by David Foster, the record producer and songwriter that I was working with a lot in the 80s. Only in that I was such a huge fan of David's writing, and one of the things that I've always loved about David's songs, especially from that time, the late 70s and early 80s, is that he would come up with these surprise chord changes. His songs took you to a place you didn't expect. And I think that this song, Heaven Only Knows, the music is loaded with those kind of surprises. Maybe more so than anything after that, because I started to kind of change gears a little bit, and I felt like maybe the cooler thing is to try and be simpler and be more direct and not be so hip. But I was trying to be hip with this song, and we even had the track recorded in the studio, and I didn't have lyrics. I didn't have a single word of lyrics. And I kind of felt like I wanted to write it by myself, as I do a lot of my songs. But I just couldn't crack the code to this lyric. I couldn't figure out what to write about. And I struggled with it for weeks, and finally I thought, you know, maybe I'll go to my friend Dean Pitchford. Dean Pitchford wrote the lyrics to Footloose, all the songs in Footloose. He wrote the screenplay to Footloose. He wrote the lyrics to the song Fame. He's written, I don't know, 30, 40 huge hits for different people. And he's a dear, dear, dear friend of mine. And so I went to Dean, and I went over to his house, and I played him the song. And I said, man, I just don't know, I don't know what to write about. So, I mean, you want to write this with me? And instead of just taking it and writing the lyrics, my friend, Dean, this brilliant lyricist, kind of sat with me and said, and we just talked about it. And I started to tell him kind of the imagery of what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be romantic, but in a different kind of way. I wanted there to be lines about, you know, like lines about saying to a woman, you know, when I draw my last breath, I want it to be in your arms. I want it to be really uber romantic. And the more we talked about it, the more Dean turned to me and said, dude, just go home and write it. You know what to write about. And I went home that night and I wrote the entire lyric. But blah, just spilled out of me. So Dean was sort of my silent co-writer on this, and I don't think I would have written that lyric if I hadn't hung out with him that night. So I owe him a huge debt of thanks. Some really nice keyboard work by Tom Keane, who was a session keyboard player that I worked with on the first album, on this particular track, and I got a lot of letters about this song, Heaven Only Knows. I'm not sure exactly what it was that touched people or connected with people, but I got an inordinate amount of letters during the first couple of years of my career about that song, even more so than some of the hits. So I'm not sure I ever really understand what that's about, but I'm grateful for it. So there you have it. That is the commentary on the first album, called Richard Marx. I was going to call it Bryan Adams, but that didn't make any sense. And that was the start of the last 22 years. So if I haven't mentioned it along the way, thanks for making this album so successful. See you soon.